Ramesh Balsekar said that relationships can be a great vehicle to self realization. And the realization has to be lived through relationships. Because how we interact with this world, how we interact with each other matters. So, over time, I have come to this realization that it's impossible to set people and things according to what we think is optimal. Ideally, we would like that people behave the way we want them to behave. People say things that we like. Situations should happen as we want them to be. However, what we see is that things don't work according to our notions, ideas, our planning. And that creates unrest. It creates anxiety sometimes, fear. Fear of losing control, fear of, being a complete vegetable and being kicked around like a football by the world and being taken advantage of. But then there is another realization which happens after spiritual awakening. And that realization is I cannot change others. So when I totally accept that I really cannot change the other, but my response towards situations can change if I'm aware enough, if I operate from the core of my being rather than from an image that I identify myself to be. For example, if my beliefs come in the way of my relationships and I do not have any capacity to reflect on those beliefs and see if they hold, see if they are solid, if they stand the test of time, then I'm operating based on assumptions. And Ramesh ji would say, ego loves to assume. Ego operates on assumption. Assumption of how the other should be. And based on that, it formulates how I should be. So, when we live with the image of the other rather than how the other is in the moment, we are reducing that other to something very limited. In other words, we are introducing a separation between ourselves and the other. So we say, we pass a judgment, we say, the other is a certain way. They belong to a certain group, they are minority, their religion is different from mine, their color is different from mine, their ethnicity is different from mine, their food is different from mine, their political affiliations are different from mine. Therefore, I cannot get along. Therefore, they are not good enough for me. So when we operate from these notions, we completely limit the other. And in that, the moment we limit the other, we limit ourselves. Because then there is this image that I'm conforming to, that I am so and so. I have certain political affiliations. I am of a certain ethnicity, of a certain color, and I will associate only with my people. So, what happens here? I am reducing my experience. As a result, I am reducing the quality of my life. And there is bound to be conflict in my interpersonal relationship. For example, if I am in a work environment where there are people from different geographical regions, I will see them as separate entities which are different from me, which have different preferences than I have. And if I use that as an assumption and create a distance between myself and them and say that I just do not like this person because of these factors, then I am reducing my experience of life. Now, of course, we don't have to get along with everyone. It's not our job to get along or please people or make them accept us. We can certainly keep our distance. We can be with people where we have common interests, but we don't even have to dismiss people if the common interest is not there. When we create this divide, and this divide usually comes about from this assumption that others are not conforming to my views, then I try to impose my ideas onto them. Then I say that the reason I do not like them, or sometimes we even use the word hate or be resentful, because the ideas, the interests do not match. Religion does not match, color does not match. But that is how we introduce separation. And not only are we separating from others, we are separating from our very essential nature. We are cutting off ourselves, limiting ourselves the moment we limit others. But when we understand this basic principle that in our relationships, whether it is a romantic relationship or it is a work relationship or it is just family, we cannot change anybody's perception of us. We cannot force them to see us in a certain way. Then we are completely in our most natural state, because we don't have to pretend anymore to be accepted, to be pleased. And all we can do in cases where there is a strong response from the other end is to simply be aware and elicit a response from that awareness. Now, I have specified this on many occasions, but I know I have not cleared it. So, I am going to go a little bit into depth of what I mean by operating from awareness. Whenever someone puts forth their view which is counter to yours, you have two choices. Either you can say that you do not accept the view and simply move away, not have a connection in that moment with that person. Or if you accept the view, you can just tell them that you can connect with them and the communication goes forward. But in neither of these two cases is there a friction, is there a separation, because these are both responses that are coming from beingness, not from the ego. The response from the ego is of aggression, is of force, where there is unease, where there is restlessness. And it could be something like, how dare you support that political party when I support the other one? Do you know what they have done? You know, and trying to convince that person, trying to mold that person, trying to shape their personality to conform to ours. That is violence. And we all have done that, including myself. We have done that because we wanted to be accepted. We wanted to be liked. We wanted to be loved. Each one of us have done that. All the sages have done that. All the Mahatmas have done that. But you know the difference between a sage, a Mahatma, and a quote unquote ignorant man is the sage and Mahatmas accept their conditioning, whereas an ignorant or a common quote unquote common man fights the conditioning. He says, no, I am right and you are wrong. So when we operate with that force, that unease, that is a reaction of the ego. But now just imagine this situation where you are so relaxed, so immersed in your own beingness, in the bliss that is here and now, totally present, totally alert to whatever is arising. You will notice that you will not elicit a reaction even to things that are forceful from the other end. So somebody may say that you're not very knowledgeable about certain subjects, or you're not an expert in this subject, or you are. They may say anything to trigger you, but rather than responding from the force of the ego, trying to counter it, trying to be defensive, you being in your bliss, being in your beingness, will either be quiet like Ramana Maharishi would be many times, or you would just nod or just let them be without creating any separation. That means without letting thought intervene and say, why this person is like this? Why this person is trying to do this to me? Why are they not understanding? There is no need for you to make them understand your viewpoint. You just state your truth, and that is yours. And you let them have their truth. You don't fight yourself, you don't fight them. It's as simple. And I would say that it's ultimately all about this compassionate understanding, not some idea of truth that needs to be changed. All self-realization, awakening, enlightenment, whatever fancy words we'd like to use, is to bring about this compassion, this understand of our essential nature, where we accept that body mind organisms are designed in different ways. There is no such thing as a flawed design. To say that something is a flawed design is to question God. God that does not, I'm not talking about the God that sits up in the high heavens and keeps a tab on its creation. That God is just your imagination. I'm talking about God that is this animating everything, this in which everything is arising, this which is the highest compassion. So there can never be any separation with God. And the moment this separation goes away, when it is understood that beyond appearances, in appearances there is always separation, but what links everything together is consciousness. That is compassion, that is bliss, that is purity. And when that is understood, there is usually no problem, because there is usually no reaction, only responses. And there is love. In love, there is no division, there are no divisions. Wholeness. And these are not just words, this is understanding of the heart beyond the intellect. So, when the intellect formulates, it formulates from the perception of the separate self, claiming that it knows what is right. But when the heart operates, it operates from beyond that conditioning of right and wrong, where all views are accepted, where all people are accepted. Heart is all about love, all about compassion. And it includes even the people with the hardest of conditions, even those who you may say are extremely divided. Heart does not discriminate. Mind discriminates, intellect discriminates. So, the moment that intellect surrenders to the heart, melts into the heart, as Ramana Maharshi would say, that is self realization. And then, what does it matter who thinks what, who believes what? One can simply laugh and make merry and enjoy one's life without being worried about what is going on around us. So, I would just say that it is all about compassion, not about enlightenment or seeking some higher truth. There is no siddhi greater than compassion. There are no psychic powers beyond the power of compassion.